Welcome back to the studio, everybody. Today we're going to talk about what it costs to host a Battle Hardened. All right, friends, let's get into it. There's been some conversation on Twitter and a few other spots, and it's something that I've thought about doing for a while, is to talk about the financial aspect of events, specifically the Battle Hardened level events. So I wanted to go through and kind of give actual numbers on how much we make, what does it cost, the ins and outs of that, how does it kind of function. So I would love to go into all this stuff. A few ground rules. I will be using as many legitimate numbers as I possibly can when allowed. So for instance, we will talk about how much we pay judges, because that is open knowledge. You can check the judge forums and hubs. It's a posted number that we compensate for. I will not discuss the total amount that we pay head judges. That is not something that's free knowledge or open. We'll discuss the total number of tickets for events, because once again, that's something that you can find online. But I won't discuss how much my employees make. That's not my place to mention those numbers or to talk about those things. So we will be able to take a very real look at an event. We'll be able to look and extrapolate using common sense. Some of the numbers that will be missing here, we'll be able to kind of, get within the ballpark range of what we're looking at there. So let's talk about the Battle Hardened. I'm going to be using numbers specifically for our most recent event, the Chicago Battle Hardened. We've hosted events in several different cities over the years at this point. So it's information that I have that can kind of be extrapolated depending on location. So these numbers are going to be in USD. They are going to be based on the Chicagoland area, and they're going to be the most recent numbers. So events that we ran 2 years ago, even in the same venue, prices go up, things change. So, it's a fluctuating thing. So we're going to go off of what we have. So the Battle Hardens that we host are a 2-day event. We host them Saturday and Sunday. We do not host them Friday. We do not have a Super Armory Friday. Our Super Armory is Saturday night. The number one reason for that is cost. If we are there Friday, we have to pay for an additional day, which means more costs on top of everything else. And I just don't feel at this place in time that a 3-day Battle Hardened is necessary to have a good experience and to function as such. So, let's go straight into the numbers. So, this recent Battle Hardened, we had 156 players registered for the events. That is after refunds. I need coffee today. I need coffee every day, but that's after refunds. That's after drops, et cetera, et cetera. So 156 players at $50 a head means we took in $7,800 just for the Battle Hardened for registration. For the Super Armory, we had 19 players register at $20 a head, which is $380. And on Sunday, we had our ProQuest Plus, which had 52 total players at $35 a piece, which was $1,820, which means exactly $10,000 was brought in from registrations from those 3 events. We're also going to assume that I'm not paying the credit card fees that I'm not paying transaction fees, that I'm not paying the refund fees. I'm not paying for the costs to set up all of those listings, to maintain a website, etc. We're going to try to be clean and assume there's none of that, even though there is those things. All right. So $10,000, that's not bad for 2 days, right? Like, that's a pretty significant amount of money. That's a reasonable number of players, 156 players for the main event, 52 players for the secondary event. And the secondary event was Living Legends. So that's honestly a really great showing for what it was. Keep in mind that our initial cap was at 128. So we blew past that original cap on the Battle Hardened, which brought us to that full round number of $10,000. So let's talk about the costs, right? Because I'm not going to factor in what the booth made because for many reasons. One is that number is so weird We had Guardian Mastery Pack there. We had Guardian Mastery Pack there because we didn't sell it anywhere else. So we like put that aside. That would have all sold outside of the event. I didn't need to bring that. That was part of the experience. We pulled inventory for the event that might have sold somewhere else. So there's a cost to all of that. We also bought some cards, so it's a fluctuation. So the booth does definitely 100% add value. But I'm trying to make this very clean and crisp and not include that. So in the back of your mind, remember when we're talking about the costs and what we brought in, that there is an entire booth set up that has value there. On the flip side, though, we had to be closed Saturday. So our actual store was closed while we were at this event. So, it kind of is a wash, I would say. We weren't able to host any additional events. We weren't able to produce any in-person sales. And we still had staff that had to be on site here. So the other thing is, when we talk about the costs, I am not going to factor in what my employees cost to be there. We will talk about some generic numbers just to get a ballpark idea. So, okay, now that we know that we brought in $10,000 on event fees, let's look at the cost of things. So our venue was for 2 days. We had it for Saturday and Sunday, and it included a certain dollar amount of food and beverage that was required to be spent each day. In this situation, it changes per hotel and per venue and how they function. So in this case, there was a food and beverage minimum. Others don't. The best way that we've kind of figured out how to do that is to find something that we can share. So for those of you who were there, the coffee on demand the entire day for both days was part of that food and beverage minimum. So we had like 9 gallons of coffee allotted to us per day. So everyone was able to share in that. So there was no cost to the people attending the events or staff or judges or anything like that. It was just there. We even saw some random people just filling up their cups for it. So that's just part of the fee. Another fee that other venues charge that we didn't get charged here is that, like, for instance, when we go to Wisconsin, we have to get additional insurance on the events. So we have obviously business insurance and liability insurance, car insurance, all the typical stuff you need for a business. Some venues, depending on the size, shape, etc., require additional insurance. So in that case, we have to buy a specific extension to our policy that specifically covers everything that happens there. The Chicago calling, callings are very different from Battle Hardens, but regardless of what event we were hosting, if we were to ever go back there, they require security. So you have to pay security on that end. We don't have to pay that at this one. And then at some locations, like when we were in Atlanta, they require you to have a room block. So we don't do room blocks anymore because every time we've done it, we've been burned so hard. In Atlanta, they charged us like an additional, it was thousands of dollars that we had to pay because we didn't meet the minimum requirement for their room block. So it's just like, that's just one of the things that I have no control over that, right? I can have a room block and I can make the rooms for free. Let's say they're $20 a night. If nobody signs up and chooses to sleep with friends, or they get a different hotel room, or they've got Marriott points, or a hotel that they prefer to stay at, I have no control over where you guys spend the night, or if you even are spending the night. Maybe a lot of people are locals. Maybe they're going home for the night, or maybe you're just jamming games all night long and you don't need a hotel room because you're not going to sleep. So there are some costs like that, depending on the location, that can really affect the overall cost of the event. So our cost for the 2 days, for all the minimum requirements, all the taxes, all the fees, etc., was $7,402.58. And that's just to be there. Okay? So $7,402.58. That was the cost for 2 days. Had we been there Friday as well, it would have been about, I think, another $2,500 to $3,000 more. So we chose not to do that because I think we can fit everything within the 2 days. So 7,400, we'll round. And then we factor in the other major cost to an event, which is the judge staff. So for us, we had 5 judges and 1 head judge. We have an amazing judge community in the Chicagoland area. And I say that, but Maddie flew like halfway across the country to be there. So Our staff as a whole that we take every time, they're just professionals. They know what they're doing. So we can get away with 5 judges and 1 head judge. Other locations might need more judges, especially if you're onboarding judges. So, if you've got L1s or L0s that are trying to move up and participate more in the game, it can be a little bit more costly to bring them on to help them get there, which, I mean, we did originally. That's part of paying your dues and part of helping the community. But because our staff is so tuned and has done so many events, we don't need as many judges as I think maybe other venues might need. So that helps to keep the cost down a bit. So we know based on the Judge Hub website. So if you go to the Judge Hub, you can see all the listings and figure out what events you want to apply for and stuff like that. We offer compensation of $300 per day per judge. So we had 5 judges for 2 days. That's $3,000. So $3,000 for the judges for 2 days, not including the head judge. So like I said, I'm not going to talk about the cost for a head judge because that's not readily available. But we can, let's logically think about this. It's going to be more than $300 per day, right? The head judge has more responsibilities, more rules, more experience required. They have to do more stuff, so they're going to get paid more. So we can assume that a head judge is going to get paid more than the normal floor judges. So figure out what number you think that would make sense, and it's probably give or take, a couple $100 just based on the extrapolation of logic. So, but we just want to include the head judge in this. Just know that there's an asterisk, that there is more money to the cost than that. So between the venue and judge compensation alone, we're at $10,402.58. So registration was $10,000. The venue and judges is $10,402. This does not consider me paying staff. This does not consider me paying myself. This does not include overtime or anything like that. So right now we're looking at a pretty even split, right? We're not too far off on the cost and the benefit and what we received. So our goal when we host Battle Hardens, when we host events, is to be profitable. That is kind of our requirement. We need to be profitable. Now, I'm not looking to make a killing. A Battle Hardened, a calling, any type of official event that we run, our goal is never to make our pay. It's not the reason that we're doing it. It's not to say, okay, well, we need to generate thousands and thousands of dollars because this is an important part of art. No, this is more of a service to the community for us. So we just don't want to end up negative. That's the goal. If this can be flat, then and maybe make a little bit on top of it. That's where we are approaching this event. Okay, so it's extremely important to us, and I think to LSS as well, that events are consistent. That when you attend an event in one place to another, you have a similar level of experience. Now, obviously, it's going to change per location. So one of the things that we don't have control over is the entry fee for the event. So the Battle Hardened is always $50. I can't change that. I cannot adjust that. I can't raise it. I can't lower it. But on the flip side, I can add additional price support. Same with the Super Armory and the ProQuest Plus. I think the Super Armory, you might have a little bit of fluctuation. Don't quote me on that. I think the ProQuest Plus is more or less locked in. But the most important one is the Battle Hardened number. Pretty much LSS wants you to pay a similar entry fee across the board, which I agree with. I think that makes sense. I think it makes it more consistent. One of the concerns or difficulties there is that my cost to set up a Battle Hardened in Chicago or LA is very different than in, like, let's say St. Louis or Missouri or even Florida or New York. Like literally every state, every area has their own pros and cons. Some venues are more expensive, some are cheaper, some are in nicer areas, some are in more dangerous areas. So you have to kind of like play with those numbers to figure out where you're going to be at. So we're not making a ton on these things, guys. We're not. It's just not how this functions. It's not how the world works in these events. Let's look at some other things. So what are some sunken costs that we don't have to pay because we've already paid them? Let's look at our banner situation. So I have 25 hero banners that cost about $300 a piece to make. So Are they necessary? No, you don't need to have hero banners up at your events. The giant 10 by 10 banners, those are about $900 a piece, and we have several of those. And then we've got the smaller banners that like tell you where to go, the arrows and all that, the min-max arrows. Those are about 200 a piece. And we got 5 of those. So we spent thousands of dollars on banners to make the environment in which we're in more appropriate to the event. They're not necessary. You don't need them to do these things. But I think if you're really going to do this, you need to be investing more than just the bare minimum. So I didn't have to pay for, I haven't done a new banner in a little bit. We've skipped a couple sets. So that's kind of a sunk cost that we paid last year or earlier this year. So I'm not going to factor those costs in. I'm not going to factor in the cost to have tech on hand, laptops or stuff like that. So I'm also not, once again, these numbers, the 10,400 to 10 grand is also not including my staff. So I had 5 people come to set up for several hours Saturday morning because we didn't have access to the venue on Friday. So Saturday morning, I had to get 5 people to show up on their Saturday to set up for this event at like 5, 6 in the morning. And then I had a total of 3 of us staying from that 5 or 6 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, and the next day from 7 till we broke down at 10. So 3 more employees that had to work a very long shift on their weekend. There's a financial cost there. So yeah, when we're looking at the numbers, it's, and I put a quote, a poll up on social media the other day, and I'll put that up on the screen to see what people thought a tournament organizer should profit from at these events. And I did it based on dollar amount, and it was really interesting in the comments because some people are like, well, it should be done by head. It should be done based on generic things. Some people say, well, you should be at least $5,000 profit, et cetera, et cetera. So the thing that's difficult with an event like this is that so much of what we just discussed is actually fixed cost, meaning I paid for the judges, I paid for the hall, etc. I also want to issue an apology for this past event. That hall was rough. It was so hot. When I will get back to the apology, but let me go back a little bit further. So in the other industries that I work in, the companies that we own, we have major events that are in halls all the time. We have 10 or so a year at least. Some of them are multiple levels. So full on will take over an entire location. And I know where I'm going to be at those events 3 years in advance because they're so large and big that you need to register for tournaments, or I said tournaments, these are conventions, trade shows type stuff, that far in advance to make sure that those locations are booked. So when I get the notification or when I'm told, hey, maybe we should host an event, let's go look at the place, trying to find a hall in September, which is like prime, beautiful weather in Chicago. It's like the time where you're going to have all the weddings, you're going to have all the major events and stuff like that. We're not really into the graduation period. That's a little bit earlier in the summer. But finding an open venue for a Saturday, Sunday is very difficult, especially if you want one that's not horrible and disgusting. So when I booked that venue, that building structure wasn't even done yet. It was still being planned. So they're like, we're gonna have a brand new spot for you. You're gonna be one of the first people to use it. For those of you who are there, they didn't even have the doors finished and some of the windows weren't even up. But the structure was all there and sound. But it was so hot. We'll never go back there again. So I apologize for those of you, including myself, who had to deal with that heat. Had I known it was going to be like that, we wouldn't have booked that one. So we won't be going back to that specific area again because the AC was not worth it. But where was I going with this? Yeah. So just the cost for building that thing, we had to push the Battle Hardened entry from 128, and we ended up with 156. So had we stuck to the 128, we would have been way further negative at this event just starting out. But the opposite can be true, right? So if I'm able to book a hall for the same $7,400 fee and it can fit 200 people, all of a sudden it's okay, I can start profiting. I might make a couple $1,000s on this event. Maybe I'll have to add one judge to make up the difference. But since the venue, the hall, my banners, the employees are already set there. The more people that show up to the event, the more profitable it can become. But you don't know who's going to show up to your event. It's very possible that, especially in like our situation, we are before the next set is released. We are way before any major super tournament like Worlds or a Pro Tour or anything like that. The format is going to rapidly change in 2 weeks from the event. So maybe nobody wants to come. Maybe this isn't a venue that people want to go to. Maybe people already had plans in the middle of September and they don't want to come to Chicago. I don't get to see the total number of people until we show up that day. So it's just as likely we hit 200 people as it is we hit 96 or something like that. So there's not a lot of structure that we can rely on from a store perspective to factor in those costs. You just kind of have to expect what you expect. So yes, we did not add prize support to this event. There was no additional prize support for the Battle Hardened or the Super Armory or the ProQuest Plus, besides like we added some gem packs and we have Coax of Commotion playmats that we gave to the top 8, I think, of the ProQuest Plus. But the $2,000 prize support that the Battle Hardened has comes from LSS. That's why if you've ever been in a position where you top 8'd or you got a cash out prize support, we don't handle that money at all. That's 100% on the company. So they reach out to you or you reach out to them and they do it on their end. So that's not a financial requirement of us. That's one of the benefits of hosting these things, is that cash prize support, the additional things like the promos and the gem packs and the couple playmats and stuff that LSS provides, that's free of cost. It doesn't cost us anything to get those products. That's all provided by them, which is wonderful. And I think they do a great job at that. But I hope kind of talking this through, you can see that it can be difficult to run an event like this. We are a pretty self-promote. What's what I'm looking for? We're pretty good at what we do, right? We're not a brand new game store. We are doing well. Business is pretty good. We can financially, do an event like this. We can put up the 10 grand it costs and not have that in their bank account for months or whatever it is when they ask for deposits and stuff like that. But not every game store can do that. A lot of game stores and a lot of companies live on credit. They live on a rotating balance. They need the money coming in and going out. Their cash flow is just an issue. So to have a store have an event like this, where you get 156 players, you get 52 for the ProQuest, and then you add $1,000 in additional prize support, all of a sudden you've lost a couple $1,000 and your team is gassed from working an extremely long weekend and you're going into those other things. And then, so like, I understand the desire to want additional prize support at these events. I 100% understand. But I also wonder if our understanding or our concept of EV at an event like this maybe needs to be adjusted. There was a game store, for those of you who are newer to the game, a year or so back, that heavily hosted their own events. And they went big and they had crazy prize support and they went over the top. And, I had conversations with these people and I was like, look, like, it's cool that you're doing these things, but you're setting really unrealistic expectations, not only for your own self, but for the community as a whole. It ended up with them having invitationals to this tournament with a cash prize of $50,000. Looking at the numbers that I'm talking here, you extrapolate and you get 400 or 500 people, you're still like, the cost analysis there just doesn't make sense. And those of you who've been in the game long enough know that that tournament never happened. The game store is no longer in existence. It's actually a different game store now if you check their information. So like, being able to consistently host an event and have repeatable standards is extremely important to us. So I understand, like I said, that desire to have more prize support. But it can be very difficult when you're barely breaking even as is. And the idea of having an additional 20, 30, 40 people doesn't even, move the needle on that cost analysis there. So, the vast majority of people who attend these events, when you think about it truthfully, no, they're not going to top 8. Their goal is to win, but realistically, most of the people attending this event are going to fall short, right? So a lot of people, in my experience, talking with customers, talking with players, is that the goal of this event is to have fun, is to play the game. And if the $50 entry fee for the Battle Hardened is too much for you, I understand that. $50 is a lot. It's a decent amount of money. Maybe you just do the Super Armory. Maybe you just do the ProQuest Plus. I would also recommend that if the prize is what you're looking for, if you're looking for that cash incentive, to do your due diligence, because all of the prize support is listed ahead of time at all these events, right? Anything LSS publishes, all that information is there. It's readily available ahead of time. So that way your expectations going in are also met, right? Because when your expectations are here and what's resolved is here, like that's where it's not fun, and I understand that as well. So, yeah, I hope this information was educational. I hope you could see the cost of just one event of what it's like. I would love in the comments to hear your thoughts and ideas of how we can make this better, us specifically, or maybe the Battle Hardened scene as a whole. I will say that the calling level is a whole different animal. It's a whole different process. The expectations, what needs to be done, it is a completely different thing. And I would not take the information that I shared today and try to use that to explain or to understand how Battle Hardens or even higher end events go. I mean, the cost to do things at larger events, it's insane how expensive things can be at different locations. So yeah, this is what I have to share with you. I'd love to hear more about what your opinions are. If you think that this is working, if you'd like to see any changes, please let's talk about it in the comments. So hopefully we'll see you at the next event, and I hope you're enjoying Super Slam. Take care.